And this is how I'm going to waste my life. Man, it's April 6th, and hopefully everybody survived April Fools and everything like that, and it's the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. My name is Charles Ray Dawson. I'm the Associate Broker and Residential Sales Manager of this fine establishment, and this is episode 114. So, real estate is doing real estate and stuff. Interesting week this week that news came across this morning, and we'll see how it filters out. But yesterday, the day before, there was some noticement from the banks and stuff that they were starting to lower their interest rates because the buyers were just not coming out anymore. And, we started to see, demand starting to diminish a bit. Now, you got to remember, one of the interesting things is that there were companies out there, there are organizations out there, their entire product is you, the buyer, and they want to take your mortgage and package it up and sell it as a REIT to downstream investors. And if they don't have any product to sell, then they have to start, lowering the price of their product, which means eventually they have to start lowering your interest rate. So that's an interesting little tweak. And we're starting to see those rates come down, which should pop up into more supply and everything. And when I mean more supply, I mean more buyers. All right. So remember, water in, water out. I'm going to show you in a visual here in a bit. That was a big thing on that. I noticed that Inman, which is a real estate news agency, had an article about how brokerages can respond to that Department of Justice suit about who's going to pay for the buyer's broker's commissions. It was an article that's basically just recanted everything the ProStar has been doing for the last 2 years. If the Justice Department and the Biden administration decides that you, the buyer, need to cough up more money to pay for your real estate agent instead of having the seller's agent pay that buyer, then that's the way we're going to have to go on this. So that's why we do buyer brokers agreements. And it's interesting seeing that, okay, now this is becoming a national narrative. I'm actually a little proud that we were well in front of this curve. And yeah, we did get a little pushback on it, but all of our agents adopted it, and we did not get that much flack from buyers on it, especially once we explained to them the situation and how that's going to work out. The interesting thing along the line is how this is going to affect downstream sellers, all right? Because now it's going to be harder to be a buyer, all right? But hey, we don't care, all right? We meaning we as the federal government, because we're not writing our Congress critters going, this is ridiculous, this needs to be stopped, why are you letting the Department of Justice doing that? But we as a society have decided that buyers just aren't spending enough for houses, so let's get them to spend more. I see that the people who think this is a really great idea, the haves, wanting to make sure that they have more. And I'm really, really getting close into socialism on this bit. So we're going to back out of this conversation a bit. And let's just go straight to the numbers, right? Because we're looking at the numbers as of April the 5th, yesterday when I ran these things. And we have 13,420 active listings, which is down 346. We're still going down, people. Of that, 1,947 were new listings. We spiked up to 130. But on the contract side, 2,710 houses went under contract. That's up 45. And closings were 2,103. That number's offset because it's the end of the month. That's always spikes up. Coming soon to an MLS near you is 608 new listings going into that bucket. Now, our supply still came down a bit, all right? So we're at 60.1 on Crawford Report on supply. Our demand is at 82.2, even though, we are seeing people put in less applications. Those people who do currently have applications and holding pre-qual letters are still out there. And that gave us a number of 136.9 for the Crawford number. Breaking down the individual cities and stuff, all right, we see Tempe is balanced out. No change from last month. They're at 133.7. All right, the index last month was 134, so they were still technically in a buyer's market or seller's market. All right, everybody else is going up except for Paradise Valley. Paradise Valley is still starting to struggle down, even though at 111.9 they're still technically in a seller's market. We Only balanced market we have out there right now is Goodyear at 107.8, still leaning towards the seller side of the fence. And Queen Creek, Maricopa, and Buckeye are your bargain shopping areas. Buckeye being at the bottom at 67.1. And those areas are mostly because of the new builds. All right, why buy a house that's 3 or 4 years old if you can buy one that's brand new for the same price? Builders out there are pricing their thing comparatively to the existing houses on the market, and people are going for the new builds just because of that perception of better quality, less repairs, everything else, all the other benefits you get with the new build. So that's what we got going on there. Now, it's a relatively short day. Did not have a lot of stuff come up this week, but I watch a lot of podcasts and I listen to a lot of things. And one of the ones that people were strongly suggesting, and this is just one of those meta inside baseball things. People said that for some reason, if you have a podcast with something mindless happening in the corner or taking up the main screen, you can actually reduce your picture all the way up here, and people will watch. Some of the example was you can play a motorcycle racing coin collecting game. You can have falling sand and everything going out. And that sounds pretty cool. I think it's actually boring, but when you're talking basic conversation that does not relay itself to graphics well, it makes a certain amount of sense, because for some reason this is going to be super hypnotic for people. Especially if I can make a little line like that and have this little pile of sand suddenly get directed over there. Sound like fun? So let's use this. Let's use this as an experiment, okay? Remember, you guys, I tell you a lot. The inventory that you see is like a bathtub. And here's a happy little bathtub. And in your happy little bathtub, new houses hitting the market. All right, and old houses being put back on the market, all right, it's called your supply. And as you can see, as your supply comes up, you start having the supply build up as new houses and everything come on. These are houses for sale, signs go up, they hit the MLS. Hey guys, buy me a house. That's what you're seeing here. Demand is coming out of this bucket, all right? So water comes in, water goes out. So if this is your existing supply, houses that have already been built and people are moving, died, selling, divorcing, marrying, whatever, putting it on there, and these are new build or new buyers coming in buying those houses, this is how you get a balanced market. Now, if you notice at this point, right, it's coming in at a certain rate. In this case, it's a rate of 1, and it's leaving at a certain rate, and I can't tell you what that is because I literally just hit my little squiggle right there and erased a little bit. And when your supply drops, all right, less houses start coming in, all right, at a certain point, houses keep draining even though things aren't coming in. And you might have a little bit of that, and all of a sudden, no more new houses and no more, inventory as it slowly trickles out. All right. Let's do another line over here, okay? Let's say this line over here, these are your brand new builds, all right? Now, the interesting thing about new builds is that builders turn off a lot faster, all right, because they're projecting down rates. In this case, they saw that people weren't putting their houses out there, but the demand was still there. So they decided to start filling that bucket up by building new houses. And when you have both sides going on, you can get something like this. Here comes your new houses, brand new houses over here on the right, and here are your existing houses being sold by human beings on the left. Right? And between the two of these, you can see that over time, you're going to start seeing that bucket start filling up again. Now, for some reason or another, interest rates get spiked by the feds who are desperately trying to cram down inflation that's not actually there. Then you'll start seeing that bucket fill up really quick. Right? Now, as this bucket starts filling up really quick, you have a problem, right? And maybe you get just a little bit of people going, okay, I'll still buy a house, all right? But now you got that supply coming up. And so what happens is over here, your sellers are going to, or your builders are going to go, okay, We're not going to get the return we want. Let's turn off our bucket. And we're back to happy little normal homeowners putting the house on the market. Happy little home buyers buying their houses out. Nice little balanced market. So using this as an example, let's talk about what happened during 2008. All right, because in 2008, we had this kickoff. We had a market. All right, we had a market that seemed pretty standard, pretty steady, and everything like that. But what we started happening is we have normal people selling their houses in a normal way. I move, house got too small. All right, we have builders building their houses in a normal way. And we have a normal amount of people coming out there deciding it was a good idea, all right, to buy those houses, and everything seemed pretty standard. Normal amount of houses coming in, new builds coming in. Here we go. Nice little happy balanced market. Then what starts happening at a certain point, people decided that owning a house was a really good thing. With that owning the house being a really good thing, what we want to do to make sure people own houses is we're going to go and we're going to increase the demand by increasing how many people can buy a house, right? By lowering the requirements to get a loan. And what that effectively did is that made the world look like this, right? Everybody starts buying houses. New builds are getting bought out. Houses have been put on the market. Things start picking up really quick. Sound good so far? All right. So in response to this, the sellers over here on this side of the house decided, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to change up the color on that. Let's go to... I need something that will display really good against that. Okay, yeah. Here are your new builds. Here's your traditional sales coming in. New builds are coming in, traditional sales. I like the way that looks. This is your two demand sides coming out. This is a normal demand that you would have. All right. This is the extra people from people who really shouldn't have been able to afford a house but decided they could afford a house anyways. All right. And at this point, you start getting a lot of activity. All right. And you actually start seeing supply disappear faster than it comes in. So you start getting that rank market speculation, which actually got to the point that means even more people got interested in buying houses. And as those more people got interested in buying houses, then you started seeing this thing die off real quick. Right? This is the kind of market that you were seeing back in the day when, oh my God, you put the house on and it's gone that same day. All right. This is really high turnover. More and more people get involved in the whole thing. This is great. This is wonderful. And then something happened. All right. At a certain point, the investors started realizing, hey, you know what? These houses actually aren't going to work. These actually don't work for us. So we start losing that little bit of investors going in there. And so that starts building up. And then that interest rate spike happened. And then this happened. All right. Notice we still have all these people trying to throw houses in there. Builders were lagging a bit behind. So what the builders decided to do is, hey, let's build more houses. So they started building a lot more houses. All right. Sellers, people who are still trying to sell their house are still selling their house as normal. People who are still trying to buy who qualified are still trying to buy as normal. But now we got this huge builder rush coming in. And this started picking up that huge supply point that we're having a problem with. And then the banks started to fail. And when those banks started to fail, all right, nobody bought a house all of a sudden. You watched inventory drop. And see, now we're starting to see things build off onto the side over here, build up over here. This is your crash. Inventory is going through the roof. Builders responded to that by going to zero. No more builds. All right. People still needed to sell their house though. All right. We also had a recession going on. You start seeing issues happen along the lines of, oh, ever-loving crap. I lost my job. I can't afford these 3 houses. Then you started getting a new line of houses we never had before. And this new line of houses that start coming in is called This one right here. What color does that come in at? Okay, now we got this little new line coming in. These are the foreclosures hitting. People who were not able to sell their house, all right, that got underwater, couldn't make the payments. All of a sudden, now they're putting in. Their houses are coming to the market. That's when we started getting all of those foreclosures, all those HUD properties, all those bank-owned properties and everything else. The little problem at the bottom of this whole thing was this right here. See that little sparkly thing? All right. This is what happens when money decides to come out of the market with all of this inventory, with everything else. When the banks started to fail, it created a little spark at the bottom because those banks owned inventory. And people had loans going one way or the other. And boom, everything blows apart. Then eventually, at the end of the day, the bank's own stuff disappeared. All right. And we had to put this whole thing back together. All right. When people came in, redeveloped the bottom of the market with the existing inventory, with existing buyers, and things went pretty good. That inventory started picking back up. It took us a long time to get rid of that inventory. And even these happy little builders decided they were going to come back into play. And now they're building again. But as you can see, a lot of people still weren't buying until those interest rates dropped down to god-awful 0. All right. Remember a couple of years ago when we were looking at 2, maybe 3% interest rates, and that actually decided to make, it add more buyers in there. Now that we have more buyers, we're actually looking pretty good. And then you start seeing that inventory drop. The other thing that started happening in this thing is that these builders, they would start and stop. All right. We were not in a great position to begin with during COVID. So when COVID kicks in, all right, once again, inventory, whole bunch of people pulled out of their purchase of their homes. All right, a whole lot of banks decided to turn around, so we got that inventory spike, and then inventory builds up over COVID, and then people with those interest rates realizing I really need a bigger house decided they were going to build those houses. So after that little COVID boop right here, then we went back to this, and now we see inventory dropping down again. So interesting little screen sign. And I don't know if this made you guys decide to watch this more. I don't know. You can do a lot of fun things with a lot of fun things on this. Draw little lines. Not sure what that does. I know what the fire does. Fire does this. And fire blows up over there. But from an inventory standpoint, remember that bucket I just drew for you, right? What houses come in, houses go out. Demand, buyers take the houses out, right? Builders and people who own houses putting their houses back on the market, put in. Right? People transferring from one house to another and stuff like that, they put one in, they take one out. And what we have now is with that interest rate spike that we just did, we had a whole bunch of things just tightened up, especially the iBuyers, by the way. All right, those iBuyers, I should have drawn that in this little sand thing. These iBuyers people, I don't even know how that happened. I'm going to see if I can't erase whatever is causing that little. The iBuyers were a huge. This is what I get really spooked about when I'm sitting here talking about something out loud and then the ads start coming in, describing what I'm talking about. Isn't that odd? Wasn't that odd? Got a couple stories about that. So those iBuyers currently and recently have decided they are going to let's see, Open Door is a really classic example. When people started backing off of buying houses back in May and April of last year, Open Door initially thought, this is great, this is wonderful, we can benefit off of what these people think by buying all these houses. So they actually doubled down on their purchasing in those last 2 months. We were sitting there going, hey, we got sellers out here who are suddenly desperate to sell because they're not selling as fast. Let's go pick all those inventory up. And I was just looking at a house that's been on the market for over 247 days. All right, 247 days, and they are still have not sold this thing, and they are overpriced. All their comps in the neighborhood are going at $375. They still have their house at $425. They bought it for $515. All right, they're going to lose over $100,000 on that one property. Now, Tina over at the Cromford Report, she says that they've already priced that into the books and stuff like that, so it's basically a loss. They've already realized that loss in previous financial filings, so it's not hurting them to hold on to that property, waiting for it to eventually decide to sell. They might want to hold on to it and just wait for the market to come back up, because the market is actually coming back up, which I find is really interesting. So we'll have to look into that. But when they came out of the market, that they were such a large part of demand here in our market, it really, really did, squirrely things. Our inventory is still up. All right. It is still not where it should be, but it is up year over year. But we're going to start seeing that correct here very shortly in a bit. Remember, our inventory spike kicked off right around April, May. Okay. Spiked up into November. Or actually last week of October, and has been moving down since the last week of October, right? At some point, we're going to cross back over, just like everything else. So stay tuned, stay watching the pretty colors, and that is a pretty color. It sort of reminds me of, that'd make a good logo for a state. That'd make a good logo for Arizona. The one thing you need to always keep track of on all of these things is you're going to want to be talking to your lender, all right? As these rates go back and forth, and I heard a rumor saying the Fed might do an emergency rate drop because it's like, oh, honey, we broke the economy. Let's see what happens on that. That'll be a lot of fun to figure out. But long story short, fun and interesting time to be alive. In my little inner chaos troll, the little spark in the corner is just fascinating watching how this all happens and works out. So you guys have a great weekend. Work your circles, play with your sand, watch your children and pets around water. Don't drive into anything flooded. And I'll talk to you guys later.